Cool.
Hello, this is Stephen Anthony Morse with Morse Better Pictures Presents Buzz and the Biz with my first guest, Deaton Gabbard. Is that how I say your last name?
Yeah, you got it.
All
Nice.
right, right on. So Deaton is an actor, writer, director, producer, editor who knows video effects as well. And he's also a casting director. He does a little bit of everything. It looks like he's working out of Kentucky. Am I correct?
You're correct.
He does a lot of traveling, though. He gets around to just about everywhere, it seems. The man keeps pretty busy. Um, let's see here. What made you want to get into the film business in the first place, Deaton?
So I've always wanted to be an actor or do something with film ever since I learned it was a job. But I mean, being in Kentucky and still having a home base in Kentucky, you just don't really think of it as like a viable career, especially because everyone is telling you that every 5 minutes that you say your dream. I
Right.
remember actually some teachers that was like, "Yeah, I want to be an actor." They're like, "You should be a lawyer or a doctor," and I'm like, "You're a Can I cuss on this? You're a fucking teacher. Like, why are you telling me that I have to be a lawyer or doctor? You're not even that." But yeah. Anyway, yeah. So like, I always wanted to do it. I knew I always wanted to do it, but I didn't know that I could actually do it until after high school. I think I was like 19 at the time. I was my first gig ever was an extra on a movie called Above Suspicion, and it was a Philip Noyce film. So it was like an actual Hollywood film, and I was there for, normal set hours are like 10 to 12 hours. I was there for like 14 or 15 hours. And I was like, this is great. Like, let me do this the rest of my life. It was the first time that I actually was like enjoying life and enjoying a job. And like, I was just fascinated with everything that was going around, watching the actors do their thing, seeing the camera, seeing the lights, everything about it. So it was at that point that I was like, okay, I'm going to try to take this seriously. Now,
Mhm.
we all know that that's not when you actually take it seriously.
Right.
When I really started taking it seriously was last year. I actually was ready to quit. Not a lot of people know this, but I was ready to quit. And I just was like talking to my girlfriend. I was like, basically, things have changed. This is getting harder. She has 3 kids. Circumstances are different. Something has to give, or I need to grow up. That's kind of how I was thinking. And it forced me to really focus on acting training, making sure that I was marketing right, making sure that I was putting 120% auditions, and it paid off because I
Mhm.
was filming every month since about March or April of last year.
That's awesome, man. Congrats. You actually covered my next question because I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
what did you get for your first gig? So that rolled into that excellently.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I totally get that for sure, man. Having kids and everything and trying to juggle what most people treat to be a hobby when you're trying to treat it like a business can be frustrating at times, especially when you've got other circumstances to deal with, not just you as a person, but a
And it
family to
was
worry about as
different
well.
when it was just me. When I was a
Exactly. Yeah.
single guy, doing whatever I wanted, doing auditions at like 3 a.m. or 9 a.m. It didn't matter. But like now it's like, okay, this is different. Like these kids, I have to support them. Like I have to,
Mhm.
and more so even than that, they need to be taught like, if I'm doing the acting thing, I need to be making money. I need to show this is a viable career. I don't want them to have the same idea of like, I would support them obviously with art or whatever, but like it's a tough career,
Mm.
and you're gonna have. I mean, I'm in my this is the beginning of my 6th year as an actor. I'm sure that's one of your questions too. So let me go ahead and throw that in there. And it wasn't until last year that I actually started booking stuff. Like I had my first SAG supporting role was last year, back in July.
And I think your first credit was like 2015, I think, on IMDb or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, that was when I was an extra, and the whole thing with that was like I wasn't in Lexington, and like the hotspots were Lexington or Louisville, and at the time I didn't really want to drive and stuff, and there was a time where I didn't have a car for like 7 months, so that obviously put a damper in it. But it was still like the end goal was I wanted to do film and stuff, and fast forward like 2 or 3 years later, one of my first short films that I did, that was a lead in, was with my now production partner Cam Dyer. It
Mhm.
was his student film that he had to do for BCTC in Lexington, and that little film there. I mean, it was shitty. We can be honest. It was fun, but it was like it was bad. But I saw potential in it, and I saw that, Cam is a creator. He has the same drive that I do, and so that spawned our production company, Cobra Pit Productions, which, like 9 short films and a feature film, and now we're in pre-production for a feature film. Like that's one of those things. It's like a long lasting thing that just came out of this. Hey, a Facebook ad that looked shady. That was like, I need this like 19, 20-year-old jock looking, like that kind of thing,
Right.
unpaid. He lived
I
in the
gotta take my
middle of
shirt off. God.
nowhere. Yeah, man. No, he lived in the middle of nowhere. So like, if you know where Eminence, Kentucky is, anyone that's watching this knows where Eminence is. Like, it's literally the middle of nowhere, one horse town kind of place. So you're driving and you're just like, is this gonna be a real horror film? Am I gonna get murdered? And like, you get in the wrong parking lot, and this actually did happen. I went to the wrong drive and someone came out with a gun. I'm not kidding. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna die on this. But yeah.
That's awesome. I've definitely been in some shady situations where I'm like, oh my God, is there actually going to be a camera here? Or it's like, will this be seen after my death? Or like, what's going on here? That's funny, man. Yeah, actually, that does kind of roll me into another good question is what is your favorite genre or subgenre to act in?
Oh, that's a good question. I normally would say, so drama is what I have the most training in, and
Mhm.
that's what I normally get cast in. But really, I want to do some comedy because the comedy I have done wasn't good enough to use for my reel, or it just never came out, or whatever. I was booked for a pilot 2 years ago, and then COVID happened, so that fell through. But yeah, I mean, like, I'd love to do some more comedy stuff.
Mhm.
That's just like, it's the toughest thing to do because comedy's
Oh,
subjective.
absolutely.
Oh, 100%. But also, like a lot of comedians can tell you this, a lot of comedic actors can tell you this. If you can do comedy, you can do anything because
Mhm.
you understand the same beats that are in drama. You understand a lot of like horror scripts, the same like, and you know this, Steve, I'm sure, the same beats and stuff for a horror script are the same beats in comedy. So that's why I really want to kind of lean more towards comedy. But if I'm being honest, like my favorite genre to watch and to be in would be like thriller, suspense, like David Lynch kind of stuff or Christopher Nolan kind of stuff. Like that's my vibe, the stuff that even I probably don't understand if I'm acting in it.
Something that's going to make them watch it 2 or 3 times and be like, okay,
Yeah,
I see where you're at, my man. I see.
yeah.
Gotcha. Uh, that's another good thing to ask you about. As a writer, what type of stories do you enjoy writing best, such as comedy and horror and such?
I don't know. It's more so of like it has to come to me. Like I don't
Mhm.
force it unless we're actively, like right now, obviously I'm forcing it because we are actively in pre-production and we have a deadline. And I find that you have to have a deadline or you're never going to make the deadline.
Oh, for sure.
What I mean? You're just going to keep pushing it off, keep pushing it off. Like this has forced us to be like, oh shit, we have 2 weeks. Like we need to make sure that we have this so many pages done, whatever. But yeah, I don't really like to force it. The first short film that I did that I wrote, directed, and starred in, Blackjack, which is on YouTube. That one came about honestly because I was just arguing with myself, if that makes sense. Like
Mhm.
I don't know what happened. I was just walking around like saying some of the dialogue, and I don't know if other actors do this, but sometimes I do this, like kind of practice improv or like improvisational stuff when I'm just like walking around or like folding laundry or something because it just, keeps you on your toes. And so that's how Blackjack actually started because I started some of the dialogue that was happening there, like, and it just kept getting more fucked up as I kept talking about it. And so yeah, I ended up writing it, and my friend John Bishop, I was like, hey, do you want to do this thing that I wrote? It's kind of like it's a lot of dialogue, but it's suspense, and I want to have a little bit of action at the end. And he was game for it. So then it was just a matter of finding people. And if I remember correctly, we literally just put like a Facebook post up and found people that I'd networked with before, or people that had added me on Facebook, and found them like a weekend or like
Mhm.
maybe that day. I can't remember. It was very very quick though, and that's like the amazing thing too. I don't think that I'd be doing acting if it wasn't for the advancements in technology, because from what I've heard and like from these older interviews with like Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill and some of the older actors, it sounded like it was a bitch to make a movie back in the day.
Mhm.
Like just the amount of effort for like the actual construction of the editing with real film and stuff, like that is insane to me how they did all that.
Mhm.
But now it's much simpler. So yeah, I'll hop on that now. And also I've always said this: if we didn't have GPS, I wouldn't be able to do this job because
Oh my
I'm
God.
yeah, I mean like because you go everywhere. Like Steve said, I travel all the time, and like I would not know how to get anywhere if it wasn't for GPS. So that's one of the biggest things that kind of after high school I realized like, hey, I can do this is because I'm in a time where I can do this. Especially this past year with, I mean, COVID's awful, but it also has forced the industry to do something they were already trying to do, which is they were trying to go just to self tape.
Mhm.
But a lot of the old casting directors didn't want to do that. Well, now because of COVID, it forced everyone to do just self tapes and do Zoom stuff, and people are realizing that's the better way to do it. Because, and I'm sure you'll ask me some stuff for casting director later on, but like, it's true. You can figure out if a self tape is good or not in the first 10 seconds. And it's a lot more awkward when you figure that out in person, because I've done in person casting too.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of already out of your head at that point. You're like, okay, I'm ready for the next person. But you also feel bad because someone is giving their all right in front of you. It's a little bit, I guess, better for the casting director when they can just be like, okay, I'm going to swipe to the next video. You know what I mean?
Mhm. For sure. Yeah. Uh, Out of all the projects that you've worked on, what would you say possibly had the largest budget? And I'm talking about anything, PA, background extra, actor,
Oh,
anything you worked on.
the largest budget for sure. I was a stand-in a couple months ago, which I shouldn't even be doing stand-in stuff, but it was easy money, and I was honestly kind of feeling. I don't know if you have this too, Steve, but kind of like just I don't want to say withdrawals, but kind of withdrawals when you've been on set. Like, so when I came back from Utah, I was on set from July to end of September, basically. And I came back and I was working a normal 9 to 5, and I was like, I hate this. So
Hmm.
an opportunity came up where I could be a stand-in for the lead for the run of show, which is like the entire filming. And I thought about it and I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And I'm glad that I did it. I learned a lot. It got me to wanting to be back into producing and writing because I originally was just going to focus on acting. And being on that set reminded me how much I loved the filmmaking process. The film's called Desperation Road. I have to think about that for a bit. And I can say this because it's out now. Like the information's out. I got to meet Mel Gibson on that set.
Awesome.
I mean, like that's not, that's like a 1 in a million chance. Like I literally took this, thought it was like some small movie, and got the call sheet and it said Mel Gibson was like number 4. I'm like, oh shit, okay, this is way bigger than I thought of. And it was obviously a much different experience from like any indie film or anything that I've done. So it's one of those things that kind of, especially if you've had some of those shittier indie film experiences, it's one of those, it's like, hey, you just got to keep pushing because you're going to get to that level. And then, I mean, people are people. So you're still going to run into people that you don't like. You're going to run into people you don't get along with. But at the end of the day, you're going to get these bigger budgets. You're going to get, better food. You're going to get better, just better overall product. Like I was watching the camera work. I mainly just hung out with Cy. He was a cinematographer, and it was amazing to see his work because like it didn't even need color correction. I mean, they're obviously going to do color correction, but I'm looking at the raw footage and I'm like, this is beautiful, you know. Yeah, I
It's
forgot
amazing
who.
what they can do with a budget, right?
Yeah, yeah, for real though.
I just remember I was on set for Jungle Cruise and Hellfest, and I just
Oh
remember
yeah,
like on like the setups for food, and it just really was like, when I make my own project, I'm gonna make sure everybody eats really good on my set. You're never gonna go home like, oh, I had some crappy cardboard pizza. No, my guy, you're eating something better than that here. You know what I mean? So we try to do something a little special on each set we did. So food
and
is
that's
a
what
big
I
thing
try to
that's
do
fire
too.
for on indie sets, man.
I think the when you are going to different sets, you need to focus on one specific thing. And for me, I haven't really had a chance to kind of see people that knew lighting. So I really was like talking to the gaffer, and like he was awesome. Like every time I talked to him, he would answer any questions I had. He could tell that I was like interested in filmmaking and stuff. And just to see like the lighting that they used, I mean, they had one of these massive, I forget what they call it, like a skylight or something, but it's basically one of those stadium lights that they had on a road, and I'm like, that is, it was just cool to see. You know,
Yeah.
you just don't get to see that every so often. And also, I got to see, which I hadn't seen before, like how they actually set up like a truck for like the driving shots and stuff. I forget the technical term. I'm sure someone can say it in the comments. It's something truck, process truck, I think is what it's called. And so it was cool to see like how they set up the camera, how they set up the lights for that, and just I don't know. It was a very interesting experience. I'm glad I did it.
Oh, for sure. I bet, man. Uh, which aspect of filmmaking are you most excited about, and what would you consider your bread and butter? They can be two different things.
Acting for sure.
Hmm.
Like I everything acting is always first because that's what I'm putting the most. That's what I've invested into my life so far. That's what I've put in the most hours. It's what I just have a passion for. You know, like just telling the story, becoming a different character, and then second from that is probably I don't even know if it's directing or if it's more so what I'm doing for our feature right now, which is more so line producing,
Hmm.
like figuring out the budget, figuring out what needs to change in the script, you know, kind of tightening it up and figuring out the people that we need to work with and stuff like that. Just kind of finding the right team, which is this is what I actually just told Jaron. I had a meeting with our cinematographer before this interview. Um, what I really want for our feature film is I want to find a perfect team that can handle it without me being there.
Hmm.
Like if for some reason I book something, I'm on freaking Yellowstone or something, like I want to be on that set and not have to worry that the set is running smoothly back in Kentucky. Like that's kind of like my goal is kind of finding the right people. And
Yeah, I got
it's
really fortunate with that on He Knows, man. If I had somehow didn't show up, I felt pretty confident they could have
it's
handled
good,
that for me.
good man.
But that's definitely something you need to look for is people that you know you can kind of mesh well with and kind of have the same goal for sure.
And I
Um,
think that's one of the things that I had to learn too. Like from the start, I wanted to be the editor, the director, the everything. Like I wanted it to have my name on it, a Deaton Gabbard film. And then I actually was on a set, and I was like, you know what? You need to delegate.
mhm.
Like for Blackjack, for instance, I edited the rough like assembly cut and didn't like it. And I was like, you know what? You need to if you want to like get this out there, you need to find someone who's an actual editor and get them to edit it and color correct it because that's just something that you can't do. But you can find those people, like I said. So I kind of enjoy finding different people and collaborating with different people.
Oh, for sure. So, what draws you to a project as a director?
Oh, that's a good question. I have to like the story for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have to like the story enough that I can see what I would want to watch in my head as I'm reading it. Like it has to be a good script. And that's why I tend to direct the stuff that I write
Same.
because I have this. Well, you know, you have this problem. I feel like I don't have this problem, but I have this problem that if I've wrote it, I know exactly how I want to do it. And it's actually nice that I'm not feeling this way for this feature film because I was afraid that was going to happen. But it's like I write it, I know exactly how I want it. I see it in my head, and I don't feel like anyone else will see that vision. So then I have to direct it. But yeah, it really just boils down to the story first. Like
Hmm.
it has to be something that I find interesting, that I think that we can do something interesting with. I couldn't do like a Hallmark, you know, romance film or something. Like it's just, or if I did, we'd find some weird camera tricks just to make it cool. But like that's yeah, it just boils down to the story and if like it's a good story.
For sure. Yeah, that's definitely a main focus for me too, is like the story has to make sense before anything moves forward, you know, and a lot of people don't really respect the writers when it comes to, you know, indie films especially, but overall anything, let's be honest. Like you
Yeah.
probably don't know who wrote like the top five favorite movies you have on your list. You know, well, maybe we do because we're
We
nerds,
do because we're cinema. But yeah. Well, it was cool
but
because like that was something I really liked about that movie that I was talking about, Desperation Road, because it's based off a book, and the writer of the book, I met him. He actually adapted the book himself into the screenplay, so he was on set the entire time too. So I thought that was cool. So there
that's
were times where like Mel or Garrett, the lead, would be like, "Hey, what about this, you know this character? I know it changed a little bit from the story, like how do you want it, because he adapted it. And it was cool to see them respected enough to ask him, or like the director would come up and be like, hey, we're gonna do this, like, and I'm sure there's plenty more before, in pre-production where they did that. But it was just cool for me to see the writer actually involved, because I feel like that's very, very rare.
Mhm.
Like you said, especially for indie film, because they just like, good luck.
Yeah, right. You bought it. Good luck, my guy.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, as a writer and an editor, what programs do you like to use?
So I've only used like Adobe Suite, so I can't really talk about anything else other than that. I've played around with Resolve, like DaVinci Resolve. Not really a big fan of it. I haven't had a chance to work with Final Cut or anything like that. But yeah, the ones that I mainly focus on are Premiere and After Effects.
Mhm.
That's what I love.
And that's for the editing side, right?
Yeah,
What
for
about
editing and
writing?
visual effects, yeah, yeah.
What
Oh,
about
you
as a
said
writer?
writing?
Yeah.
Oh, as writer, we use Celtex. Sorry, I didn't hear that part.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was a two-part question, so
Oh, my bad. Yeah.
you're fine. I used to use that as well, and then I finally had to switch over to Final Draft because everybody was like, it's industry standard, and I'm
Yeah,
like, but I missed
actually,
the format of Celtics. Like it was just I grew accustomed to it, and I actually wrote "He knows" on my phone. Like I worked at FedEx Ground, and I'd have like a bus ride from one location to the other. It was like an hour long each day, and the company paid us to take this bus ride, so I'd be on my phone writing "He
oh,
knows," and I
nice,
was like, now I'm a paid writer. Not
nice.
really, but technically I was because I wrote it
Yeah.
on my phone. But that's just a little fun thing about that program I really thought was cool. And it used to be free, but I'm not sure if it's free anymore for people.
I think we pay for it, but that's just because we have so many people working on it
Mhm.
too. Like we invite the people there. Like we're
It's
gonna
still pretty
invite
cheap and
you to part of
affordable
it.
though, as far as
Yeah,
programs go, for
yeah.
sure.
I mean, if anyone's looking for an affordable one, it's out there. But I mean, honestly, like you can find screenwriting books. Like I've read screenwriting books. I have screenwriting books, and I used to just use like Google Docs and just kind
Mhm.
of format it myself. CeltX just kind of makes it easier. It's quicker. That's the only difference.
And two, when you start getting to a certain standard and you start getting bigger budgets like
Mhm.
10, 15 grand plus, you want to have it in a format. So having a writing program is a lot better than having Google, but starting out, that's a great way to start out. But yeah, if you're sending it to somebody that maybe
Yeah.
FICOR or a SAG or something, you might want to have it, rent through a real program just because it looks a little prettier, just a little
Yeah,
bit.
sure.
Um, so we did say a little something about casting director a little bit earlier, but as a casting director, what tips would you give to folks that are interested in submitting for a project? If possible, give me a few examples of the do's and don'ts when submitting for a project. Maybe go into a little bit of detail about the casting process on both ends as actor and casting director, since you do it all.
So I kept saying I was going to make a video on this, and I never did. But I do have notes that I could pull up if I really wanted to, because I
I
wrote
tried to
it
give
out.
you that opportunity earlier because I figured this would be a fun question.
I wrote it out. I just didn't make it. But yeah, basically, the key thing is know your craft. Be in acting classes, like that's actor to actor, casting director to actor, whatever, because you can tell a million miles away who's trained and who's not. And it just comes down to things that would take me 2 3 hours to talk about, but like boiling it down is just like the simple things of how professional does a self-tape look. Can you hear the person, can you see the person, because there were some tapes that were sent in I couldn't even see them hardly. Like it was like they had a phone flashlight on or something, which I mean, use
I've
what
been
you
guilty of
got.
that myself, so that's a good
Huh?
tip to have. That's I'm guilty
Yeah,
of doing that myself when I was first starting out, so that's good to know.
oh, for sure. I mean, my self tapes look terrible. Like starting out, you can go to YouTube and see them, and I usually would use like the light from a window or something. Like I had a really small apartment at one point, and I just made it work. A light that was like on top or whatever. And you don't have to pay for like anything big. Like right now, I just have an umbrella light that's like $20, and that's usually what I do when I set up my pop up background. But you don't even have to have that. That's just kind of to make it more of like so there's no distractions, so you don't blend into the background, whatever. That's a little bit more pro stuff. But what it boils down to is just making sure you can be seen, that you can be heard. And one of the biggest things is framing, and this is something that a lot of like top casting directors talk about. And your framing should be like chest to your head. Like you really want to be able to see the eyes, you want to be able to see what you're thinking. The only exception would be kind of more of like a sitcom or like a comedy, where you might need to use your hands more and you need to see that in screen. But for the most part, just as technical goes, you want to have that framing. And then the other biggest thing is like, this is something that I had to learn, is listening. A lot of people, especially newer actors, don't active listen. And it's a skill. Like it sounds weird. It takes time. It takes practice. I remember when I first started, it sounded like the dumbest thing I ever heard, and now I live by it because it'll even help you like remember your lines if you're listening to the other person.
Mhm.
I'll never forget it. Michael Rosenbaum played Lex Luthor in Smallville. Shout out to his podcast Inside of You because I listen to that every day at the gym. He talked about
I studied it for this questionnaire. No.
yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. He actually talked about that he was on Smallville and something wasn't working. And the guy that played his dad, which I'm blanking on the name right now, he's a huge actor. You know,
John
Vinyl,
something, I think. John, I forget.
his last name. I can't think of it. Anyway, yeah. So the person that played his dad, who's a huge actor. Sorry if you ever see this for whatever reason, but I forget your name. He looked at Michael and was like, "Are you listening, Michael?" And he said it clicked. He was like, "Oh my god." The simplest thing that you learn in acting class, the simplest thing that you're taught in year one of theater, I wasn't listening. So that was another thing that, especially Weekend Deadway, the trailer just came out. I cast that, and that was one of the biggest things that I could tell is when people were trying to remember their lines and they weren't listening to the reader.
Mhm.
Also, have a reader. Don't unless you are like really, really, really like strapped for time, which I've had it happen. Have a reader. The reason being is because it's not real acting. It is too pre-planned. If you are having yourself say the lines in like a recording and you're having to match that timing and everything, and honestly, there's no excuse at this point because you can call someone up. There's tons of groups on Facebook like rehearsal for self tape or rehearsal and self tapes for actors. There's all kinds of different groups that you can find a reader. So there's really no excuse to not have a reader at this point, I feel like.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly hard to find one sometimes, but I know you are on a group where you're actively reading for people and helping promote other people that do the same. So there's always a way to find it if you're willing to put in that little extra effort, and people will work with you in your time if you're respecting their time as well. So yeah, that's a
Absolutely.
good tip as well. So what social media platforms do you like to use when promoting a project?
So Facebook's a huge one. I've got my personal, which is Deaton Gabbard. I've got my professional one, which is Deaton Gabbard Actor, which I then rebranded my YouTube and my Instagram too as well, Deaton Gabbard Actor. So we tend to use Instagram and Facebook for the most part. I'm trying to do more with TikTok, although I'm terrible about it. But I also try to do like my short film came out. A poster just came out for this series that I'll be doing called Renegade, and we're trying to post that on TikTok and stuff. I haven't really figured out that algorithm yet, but from what I've heard, it's really, really good if you can figure out the algorithm, like when to post and stuff. So I'm going to try to push more for TikTok as well. And then obviously with this feature film that we're going to be casting probably around May, we're going to be heavily doing Indiegogo, heavily going to be probably doing live at least 2 or 3 times a week is what I'm planning on doing, bringing up some of the actors, hopefully bringing you in to talk about it once you're more in the, more knowing what's going on. Because I can't really do that right now. So what do you think of the feature film, Steve?
All right. Sounds delightful. No.
See, look, he's so good. He just improv on the spot. But yeah, I mean, social media as a whole is really, really useful, especially if you can learn like the ad portion of it.
Yeah.
We haven't really ran yet, but I'm planning on doing that for the Indiegogo as well. Because you just really need to like target the niche. You need to figure out, first your who is going to be your audience,
Mhm.
and then kind of figure out even more of a niche of that. Is it horror? Is it horror that's going to be like 20s to 30s? Is it going to be more so like 40 to 50, or is it a kids show that's going to be like 8 to 12-year-olds and you need to target their moms, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna cover, what type of experience you have as a producer and what, are the biggest challenges a producer might run into. But I feel like you've covered all that for the most part. You've done a little bit of everything as producer.
Yeah,
They pretty much cover making stuff happen and keeping everything on track, which, those are the challenges. So I feel
yeah.
like you covered
That's
all
kind of
that
what it
pretty
boils
well.
down to. I mean, I always joke a director, you have to have an answer regardless if you have an answer,
Mhm.
which is the truth. I mean, when it comes down to it. And that was here's something else too. Whenever I did the stand-in on Desperation Road, what I really realized, and also these other films in Utah, because they were like $2 million budget too. The thing that I've realized is nothing changes. Like they were running into time issues because time is always going to be a problem. They were running into issues where the camera, their A camera stopped working. They had to get another camera from LA. No joke. It actually happened. And like had to film with the B camera for as long as they could. And just like these little things. So like when it comes down to it, film is film. The only thing that changes is the level of experience of the people involved and the amount of money that's being put into the project.
Mhm. And even then, they're still scraping money together to make things happen because
Even
it's
then,
on such a bigger
exactly.
scale. So
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we covered that. So I'm just going through my checklist. My Zoom has 5 more minutes, so I want to make sure I get all the good ones in. So tell me about some of the projects that you've worked on and where folks can watch them.
Okay, so I have to think for a minute because there's a lot that's not out yet.
Oh yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, the stuff that is out, there's a short film that I'm very proud of called A Recipe for Serendipity. Recipe for Serendipity, and it's a film that I got to play a serial killer in. So that was a lot of fun. It's a short film that's only available on Facebook as of now, but it is making the festival circuit, so that might be released on YouTube or something later on. I'm not 100% sure about that because it's not my film. Let's see. You can watch any of our original stuff, Cover Productions, on YouTube, which you can watch Broken Vows, which is our very first feature film, and it will show you that anyone can make a feature film. They might not necessarily know how to make a feature film. So that's a great, like, if you just kind of want to watch something, be like, I can do better than that, go for it. Because we learned a lot on that film, mainly that focusing the camera matters. Didn't know that.
Love it.
Mainly lighting. No, actually, the biggest thing we learned was sound. Sound is very, very important.
Yeah, you can kind of get away with a little bit of the video if the
Yeah.
sound is on point for sure.
Yeah, like that was just one thing that we really did not know about was the sound. There was one part where we got lav mics, hadn't tested them out, and realized they were recording at the wrong point. So
Mhm.
like we had to match dialogue in the scene that was cutting back and forth between me and my girl or my wife, girlfriend, whatever she was, I don't know, in the movie. And the lav mic was on the person that wasn't on camera. So that one was on. So they had the wrong one on. That was fun. Let's see the good things you can watch. There's also a TV show called Solomon's Porch available now on Rediscover TV. It's a faith-based series, anthology series about this shop and some mysterious works of God. I play a disgruntled author in that. It was a lot of fun. Shout out to Chip Rossetti. I've worked with him a few times. There's also another mini series called The Dark the Messenger that I also worked with him on. I played Nightwing. Haven't gotten costume yet, but we're working on that for episode 3 or 4, hopefully, of Luke the Batwing series, which is Montez Lafayette's series that he's doing. Episode 2 should be coming out soon. What else have I done? I'm just trying to think of what's coming out. I know.
No pressure, man. We can always add links after the fact.
True. That's true.
I'll
Yeah.
have your IMDb linked on here as well, so people can go there, check out all the individual
That's
things.
probably the best
If
way of
they
doing
Google
this.
you, they might find everything. So,
Yeah, they probably found my address at that point.
yeah,
Like
right.
it's so easy to find me. But yeah, another horror film that I'm really excited for, The Art of Killing, should be coming out soon. There's a teaser out. It looks great. I'm actually gonna be working on the visual effects on that too. Getting the footage
Awesome.
for that this weekend. Can't wait. Let's see what else. That's
That,
all I
that
can
looked
think
like
of.
a really fun one, I gotta say. The Art of Killing. I was excited
Yeah.
about that.
I mean I was excited with the concept before I even got cast. Like I
Exactly.
was saw Jason like posting like crazy. I was like, that's a great idea. And Jason's gonna kill that. Like that's awesome. And then they had a casting call. I was like, fuck it, why not? And I happened to get cast. So that was really fun to see everyone. And I also tend to plug like the way that I've been getting these visual effects gigs is I'm like, hey, by the way, this seems like it's gonna have visual effects. If you need someone, I'm your guy. That's how I got the Luke the Batwing series. I was supposed to do episode 2, but I just was way too busy with acting. What a problem, you know. I was too busy with film.
First world problems.
Yeah, exactly. So work on it. But I'll probably be doing episode 3. And yeah, that's the Art of Killing has some really really cool kills. Probably my favorite like kills that I've seen, at least in them.
Mm,
They're really cool. Like just to like be on set and watch. That's like one of my favorite things about horror is like when it's gory and stuff, is to
mm.
see the different kills without like spoiling. Oh, by the way, people die in the Art of Killing. Sorry for the spoiler. Um, that kind of thing.
For sure. That's awesome, man. Well, I'm running pretty close to out of time. I got about 60 seconds here, so I just want to thank you for coming on, chatting with me. We'll definitely do it again sometime, hopefully with a live audience next time because I'll
All
figure out
right.
technology because I'm an old fart. But I appreciate you, man, and everybody for checking it out. Check out his links below whenever I post it. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks. Keep me updated. See you, Steve.
Thanks, man. Good night.
Night, man.